Welcome to another episode of Founders Club. Today I'm going to be talking to Leigh Steinberg. He's the founder of Steinberg Sports and Entertainment and is one of the top agents in the entire sports industry. He's given over 4,000 speeches and written several best-selling books on negotiation. He's also represented 64 first-round draft picks and a record 8 number 1 picks. And the movie Jerry Maguire is based around his career. We're going to be talking about how to stand out in a competitive industry like sports and real estate, how to set up infrastructure in your business so you can maximize the amount of referrals you get, and how to become a better negotiator so you can close more deals. If you have any questions, put them in the box down below. Make sure you judo chop that like button so other people just like you can find this video. And as always, if you like money and you like real estate, this is the show for you. We'll see you on the inside. Welcome to Founders Club, the show for real estate entrepreneurs. So you're one of the most legendary sports agents of all time. You've represented some of the top talents in the game like Troy Aikman, Warren Moon, Patrick Mahomes, and many, many others. But before we dive into all that, why don't you just tell me kind of how you got started in the game?
So I grew up in Los Angeles, went to school in the late 60s in Berkeley, and I was student body president. Ronald Reagan was the governor, and every time we demonstrated, he cracked down. So I learned everything I needed to learn about the art of negotiating from dealing with Governor, later President Reagan. I was a dorm counselor in an undergraduate dormitory working my way through law school. And they moved the freshman football team into the dorm. One of the students was Steve Bartkowski, who in 1975 became the very first player picked in the first round of the draft. And I was choosing between different law offers, and he asked me to represent him. So there I was, brimming with legal experience, never having practiced before, and I had the first pick in the draft overall. So there was a World League competing against the NFL, and it enabled us to get the largest rookie contract in NFL history. And my dad raised me with two core values. One was treasure relationships, especially family. And the second was make a meaningful difference in the world and help people who can't help themselves. And I saw in that first experience how athletes were venerated across the country, and they were the movie stars, the celebrities. And I thought, well, if I had an athlete go back and retrace his roots back to the high school, collegiate, and professional community that helped shape them, that they could set up a high school scholarship fund, work with the church or Boys and Girls Club. They could do a charitable event back at their college, and then they could take the leading business figures, political figures, and community leaders, put them on a charitable board, do a foundation, and that's where someone like Warwick Dunn, the former running back, just put the 200th single mother and her family into the first home they'll ever own. So it's athletes changing lives.
That's amazing. I've really noticed that, you're very passionate about giving back and doing good in the community and stuff like that. And I wanted to kind of take it back to where you kind of first leveled up, because I know you came from, in terms of the business world, humble beginnings, and kind of started in your parents' card room and built this massive business out of there. So how did that happen? Can you kind of walk us through that?
It really wasn't agentry when I got started in a formal way, but so a team could just hang the phone up like Mike Brown of the Bengals and say, we don't deal with agents. And so, but I started to represent high draft picks in football. We did baseball later, and basketball, boxing, like with Lennox Lewis and Oscar De La Hoya, Olympic athletes. But in football, I ended up centering on the quarterback position, and and got to the point where I'd had 64 first round draft picks and 12 players in the Hall of Fame, and the very first pick in the first round of the draft 8 years. So it ended up being a practice where we would profile an athlete to make sure they were a great self-starter, that they were willing to make a difference in a positive way, and it just grew.
Wow. And so at that beginning stage, were you just cold calling, or how were you getting these athletes to come on board with you?
Generally by talking about what I expected from them, which is to retrace their roots and to understand the power that professional sports gives an athlete to go ahead and I mean, the key in all of our fields is happy clients refer other clients. So
That's the truth.
it so at one point I had half the starting quarterbacks in the NFL.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. So that was one thing I noticed about you when I was doing my research, is that you have, represented many high profile athletes. The other thing I noticed was that you get called the real life Jerry Maguire a lot. Can you tell me about that?
Well, you can see that picture behind me, which is Cuba Gooding Jr. and Tom Cruise.
Nice.
Cameron Crowe, the director of the film, called me up in 1993 and asked if he could follow me around to pick up atmosphere for a film that would center on a sports agent. So he went to the 1993 draft with me, where Drew Bledsoe was the first pick. He went up to the press conference with Bill Parcells. He went to pro scouting day at USC. He came to the league meetings with him. And I told him stories, lots and lots of stories. And then my job as technical advisor was to vet the script to make sure the willing suspension of disbelief that holds you in a motion picture didn't get broken. And so you didn't think the dialogue was stilted or phony. I took actors like Cuba Gooding Jr. down with me to the Pro Bowl, the Super Bowl, and he had to pretend he was my client all week to put him in role. And he ended up winning the Oscar. I actually had to show the quarterback in the film, played by Jerry O'Connell, how to throw a spiral, because he had gone to NYU and they didn't have a football program. So there was a lot of life up there on the screen. And for the last 25 years, every time I go to an airport or out to dinner, someone rushes up to the table and either says 4 words to me or asks me to say 4 words to start with, show me the
show me the money, baby. Very cool. That's a very cool way to put your mark on something. So obviously, like, the sports industry is ultra competitive. The real estate industry is also ultra competitive. And I'm curious your thoughts on kind of how you set yourself apart and kind of how you separate yourself from the competition in a competitive industry.
So I think part of it is creating a brand which is unique. So people might know our practice for high round draft picks, for quarterbacks, for Hall of Fame players, for role modeling. So you need to have a distinctive philosophy and a brand, and then create enough infrastructure so that client referrals come. So we actually get calls from parents. It doesn't mean they'll choose us, but it means, and that's a function of having given 4,000 speeches, being out in the community, a lot of people knowing one agent and able to name one. So it's creating that infrastructure where you have coaches and football secretaries and people in the community all referring to you. And but if you're fungible, modular, or replaceable, you will be replaced. So the key is to be unique and distinctive.
Mm. Yeah, I like that. And I like what you said about the infrastructure for referrals, because I think that's a key in our business as well. Is that all the top producers, they have business coming on autopilot. Like there's many agents that never have to make another marketing piece ever again because their phone just rings, and that's mainly because they've done the infrastructure in the community to set up those referral systems like you're talking about.
And generally, what I feel is that if you want to add new clients, just spend your time treasuring your current clients,
Oh, I
because
like.
happy clients and their extended family and the people around them create a tree of referrals. So instead of worrying about the next client, worry about this one that's right
Mhm.
here. Do a superb job for him, and that becomes your calling card.
Yeah, I love that. That's really great. Couldn't agree more. That is the name of the game. And my next question, which I think you kind of just answered, was, we all want great clients, and how are you able to attract these top clients?
Um, Generally, in our situation, it's the parents who act as screeners.
Mhm.
And so all the calls will go through a father or mother or a family lawyer. So you need to have a presentation booklet that again distinguishes you, and then have a pitch in terms of talking that summarizes what distinguishes you, what your best qualities are. In our case, it's holistic. It's starting an athlete, the path to the draft, getting them drafted as high as possible, helping them establish contacts that will take them into second career, um, establishing them as role models, mentoring them through their career, and hopefully doing high level marketing. So you need to explain every part of that to the family, and then they'll cut down to a couple of people, and then the athlete comes into the mix, and then it's about rapport. So I think there are great similarities between what I do and what people in real estate do.
Yeah, I agree. And I just kind of want to recap what you just said there. So, strong brand,
Strong brand.
infrastructure for referrals, a solid pitch, a holistic approach, which I also love. That's something that we talk a lot about in our business, is having that holistic approach to where you can help them with not just the buying and selling of a house, but helping them move and helping them get a loan and helping them with all the other parts that come along with the entire transaction. And then I also like the long-term building of rapport, because that's back to how you get the continued business and really taking care of your current clients.
I think the most important skills in many ways is listening.
Mm,
You draw out another human being, cut below the surface responses they give you, and go deeper, peel back the layers of the onion until you understand someone's deepest anxieties and fears and their greatest hopes and dreams. And if you
mm.
can put yourself in the other person's heart and mind and see the world the way they see it from their perspective, then you've got a chance to relate to them at a deeper level.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that. The listening piece. And that's a good segue into the negotiation part that I wanted to talk to you about, because I know that was one of your 12 essentials to being a good negotiator, was that learning to listen piece and peeling back the onion. And can you kind of tell me about, like, in real world, what that looks like, that peeling back of the onion?
It's so if you're trying to get a family as a client in real estate, you need to understand, is it the neighborhood, price point, square footage, the view, the schools, the neighborhood, the what is most critical.
Hmm.
and to be able to respond exactly to what that person's real needs are. You could waste so much time just speaking generically to someone about what you think is important in a real estate deal, or you could understand what truly is motivating them and therefore hit those issues and speak to their deepest concerns.
Mm. And so is that just asking more questions and going deeper and deeper?
It's creating an atmosphere of trust around another human being where they feel comfortable to reveal themselves. And
Mhm.
men, especially, don't share their deep feelings as easy as women do. I'm sure female listeners would relate to that. But the point is that, can you draw the other person out? Can you create an atmosphere of trust where they feel comfortable revealing what, not what the world thinks they should be looking for in a house or a piece of commercial real estate, but what their true agenda is?
Mm. Yeah, I love that. Going deeper and peel back the onion. Um, so obviously you've been involved in a lot of big time negotiations, high pressure negotiations, things like that. Can you walk us through one of your bigger deals and how it went down?
Well, you can take any deal like Patrick Mahomes' last deal, and the first key is research. It's understanding how your client um, fits in relation to every other player. And it's understanding and then breaking that down statistically in terms of victory, in terms of what happens if you take that player off the team. And we negotiate using a packet, which is showing you just why this person's superior. And then you want to look at comparables, which is just the same as real estate. It's what are similarly situated players making. And then you want to have an understanding of what's the critical factors of that distinctive team and organization in terms of structure of a deal, in terms of um, the rest of it. And the best time to anticipate doing a deal is before that deal comes up. So can you potentially set up leverage?
Mhm.
Does your client have an alternative to, because leverage will always be critical. Can you walk away from the deal? Can you find more buyers? And so to understand that, and then craft a paradigm of cooperation where you know that you may do repetitive business with that same person. So no one deal is worth stepping on someone's neck. And if you're ethical and honest, then the people on the other side will trust you in what you're saying. And because the chances are you may come back and do repetitive business with the same people. Um, you sell one house, you'll sell the next one. One person may buy multiple houses. You want to maintain that relationship. And but again, when you're dealing with other brokers, you've got to have an atmosphere where you're honest with each other and trust each other, so you can keep doing business.
Yeah, I'm noticing that as a theme is the doing the best you can for your current clients and leveraging them for future business. One thing I also wanted to talk to you about is a couple of your other points on the negotiation principles that you have, and one of them was in the face of intimidation, show no fear. Can you expand on that one a little bit?
Well, stylistically, there are people who are bullies in the negotiation process. And I always say the fact you raised your voice doesn't make your point any more valid, and there are people who it's almost like they read a negotiation book and so they think being truculent and intimidating, is the right way to deal with it. I don't think so. I think that introduces competitiveness between people, and um, and we can't afford in either of our businesses to have deadlock, right? We can't afford something to just become so impacted and so confrontational that a deal's never going to occur. Our job is to make repetitive deals and keep moving. And so when someone comes at you as a bully, you've got to reset the way you're going to relate to each other. And um, I mean, getting
So let's
the,
break that one down a little bit. So resetting the way you relate to each other. So we're sitting across the table. Maybe it's a tough seller or a tough sports deal. Things maybe start getting heated. What's the course of action?
so first of all, it's to remember you have a client. This is not about your ego. This is not your validation as a human being that's on the line. Your job is to best represent your client and get an acceptable deal done. So you can't display anger or frustration. You have to be a warrior and be able to bleed all the emotion out of you.
Mm.
So I love all people. I mean, if left to me, if it wasn't business, I just want people to be happy. But the point is, in a negotiation, you every word that comes out of your mouth should come out for effect. It should never be anger, frustration, and the rest of it. And one key quality is resilience, because deals will look unmakeable all the time. Oh, this is
Mm.
impossible. We're just too far apart. This will happen. But you got to come back and try again. Don't push a losing argument to the end.
Mm.
If you're making a series of points on an issue and the other side's completely resistant to it, don't force them into locking in on that position. Take a break, go for a walk, uh, change it. Don't keep pushing something where you're going to lock the other side into never yielding that point again. You got to come at it a different way.
I like that. Refocus your approach and keep a cool head. Um, and then okay, so another one is be comfortable with silence. And I think this one is really tricky for people because especially in real estate, people have a tendency to just verbally vomit on the other side. And so let's talk about being
Every
comfortable
word
in the
that comes
silence.
out of your mouth needs to be tactical, needs to have some effect. If you've said everything you have to say, young men can turn old, summer can turn to fall, and nothing needs to come out of your mouth. And you don't need to blurt and fill in and give away aspects of your position and keep talking and talking. If you really listened and been reasoned and you've said what you have to say, then it's people make big mistakes when they feel uncomfortable with silence, and they just start talking and say a whole bunch of stuff that may give away a position or uh, uh, discipline in pen and tongue.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. Is there any times when you would recommend using silence like strategically? Um, and one that comes to my mind right off the bat is like once you get the yes, like a lot of times people say yes, they agree to everything, and instead of just being quiet, thanking them and wrapping up the deal, they want to just keep going and going and going.
Remember that
Um,
old movie that said always be closing?
yeah, exactly.
You you have to understand um, when you've made a deal and close it as quickly as possible. Be ceremonial. Um, Part of your argument has to be why this deal is a great deal for the other side. Um, You know, you sell a house that's been on the market for a long period of time. You know, the structure and everything is going to make you a big hero to your client. You have to think the way the other person thinks and why this is a positive deal for them and argue their side.
Yeah, makes sense. So one more that I wanted to ask you about on these essential rules for negotiating is, and this one I think is a little bit counterintuitive to people because a lot of times you say, "Hey, let's just split the difference." And one thing that I see you say is avoid playing split the difference. And I'm curious as to how you break that down.
Let's just say the real market value of something is $1 million. And we probably could agree that those are the comps and that's the way it is. Someone comes in and offers you $200,000. You just have to go back to them. That was not a reasonable offer. So, and remember, what always is going to happen is that, you know, that the deal's too easy and the real value is $1 million and both parties say $1 million. One party's going to say they would have taken less, and the other party said they would have paid more, right? And so the point is that you can't counter a ridiculous offer if you're being reasonable. You just have to tell the person, look, what the real market value is 800, $1 million, $1 million too. It's not 200, and you know that. So when you're ready to make a serious offer, let's talk.
Let us know. Exactly. So is that when you say never split the difference, is that only in a scenario where the offer is unreasonable? Like,
Yeah.
let's say that same example, we have $1 million house and someone.
So, and you're proposing $1 million and the other side's offering 200. And if you split the difference, you know, you're gonna end up at 600, and 600 is not the right number.
Right. So in that scenario, it obviously doesn't make sense. But what if?
Yeah, when you get close, you can split the difference.
Okay, that was my question. Yeah, if they offered, let's say, 975, in that scenario, splitting the difference would be okay in your mind.
Right, depending on what other points you agreed on.
Right, and assuming everyone's happy with that number.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So just shifting gears a little bit, this is one thing that I've seen you talk about, and you already mentioned it earlier, is core values. And I'm curious as to why core values are important, and for not only your life, but for your business, and then also kind of how you go about structuring those.
Because you need to understand clearly what's critical to you. What are you looking for in this career? What are you looking for in life? And surround yourself with people that share the same core values. One, for example, would be not to use situational ethics. And that means that someone might be kind to his neighbors, good to cats and dogs, but then go out in the workplace and use heinous social Darwin tactics because the end justifies the means. If you're dealing with someone like that, you understand there's no limit to what they'll do. They may not be honest. They may not be loyal. Everything's about winning that one deal. That's not a good person to do business with.
Yeah. And then any advice on how to set those up, or is it like 10 bullet points, or
Well, you just have to you whatever your core values are, if it's honesty, if it's trust, if it's long-term thinking in what you do, be kind to your future self, do the little things today that don't come to immediate fruition. But you've laid the seeds, and that person may be a client, 5 years from now because of what you did 5 years ago, but it didn't lead to something instant. So you have to plant those little seeds and just see how sincere the other person is. Now, that doesn't mean you are expecting them to lay over or lay down. It just means that you're not being dishonest with each other. You're not lying. You're not misrepresenting. You're not doing any of that. You're looking for a long-term relationship. You know you'll do repetitive business. You're respecting the other party's need to come out of this well.
Yeah. Yeah, I like all that. So I want to transition a little bit, and I know this is kind of personal, but you've been very open about speaking about it in the past, and that you had an alcohol problem, and that kind of led you to nearly losing everything, and then you kind of got sober and changed your life again. But can you kind of walk us through that process?
So I went through I didn't grow up in an alcoholic family, and early in my life, I was one beer Steinberg. But there came a time in the 2000s where my two sons were diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa, which is an eye disease which makes you blind, and there's no cure. My father died a long death of cancer, and he was a rock in my life. We lost a home, and we live in Newport Beach, a beach city, from mold, and we had to raze it to the ground. And I turned to alcohol to numb the feeling that I couldn't control these things, not in my business life, but in my personal life. And I finally got to the point where it was impacting my life, and I had to break denial about the fact I had a problem. And I went into sober living, and I worked a 12-step program, and with a unique fellowship that had meetings, and gradually was able to regain control and then go back into business. And in March, I was 12 years continuously sober, and I'm now halfway through year 13. So, and life's much happier now. So if you're out there and you're struggling, despondent, hopeless because of problems with some addictive substance, that's where I was. And I was able to come back. Now, my comeback was being a good parent and maintaining sobriety. But the fact that our business came back together, it's you got to have resilience and just see that there can be light at the end of a dramatically dark tunnel.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible. And congratulations on the 12 and a half years.
Thank you.
What about for the people out there that are struggling with addiction and things like that? Like, what advice would you have for them on what they can do?
You have to hit a certain bottom where how you're living becomes just completely unacceptable, and you'll do whatever work you need to do to get out of it. So that's first. And then finding a higher power to help you through the process is important. Getting a sponsor to take you through a program. There's help available. So you can work a 12-step program. If you need to go to rehab or sober living, you can do that. But there was a point at which my only cogent thought was where I could find more vodka. And if I can do it, you can do it. And come back over time and make your life happy again.
Yeah. And then when you found that you got back on the horse and you started your journey towards sobriety and things like that, how did the business world accept you or look at you different, or was it exactly the same? Like, how did you build back strong?
You knew there were going to be skepticism, right? That I don't have a divine right to represent athletes, so I had to prepare myself for the fact of how are you going to guarantee you'll stay sober? You know, you're getting a little old there. Are you still effective? Did all your relationships go away? You didn't manage your money too well. How can you manage ours? So you had to be prepared for skepticism and just be open and transparent about it. But I waited long enough to get refunded to make sure that those weren't all issues.
Yeah. Wow. That's that's quite a story. So couple questions as we wrap up here. So I have two young boys at home, 5 and 7 years old, and I like to ask all the successful people that I talk to on these interviews what they would say to them on how to be successful in life and business.
A pristine work ethic, the ability to take current gratification and postpone it for future gratification. In other words, a willingness to work towards a goal that may not be immediate. All the things that sports teaches, taking complex information and using it in real time effectively, teamwork, courage under pressure, productivity in adversity, and the ability to come back. Life's going to set you back at times. It's not a question of whether that will happen. It will happen. The question is what you will do to be resilient, to be able to see light at the end of the tunnel, to be able to be optimistic.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I'm hearing that be another theme in our conversation is the resiliency and the being able to bounce back and face adversity and things like that.
Right.
So last question is just tell us what it takes to be successful at negotiations in 60 seconds or less.
Self-control and the ability to have a clearly set agenda in your mind about what's most critical, what you can live without, what you have to have, and energy, because deals will fall apart a million times. You've got to keep coming back. You can get pushed back, but you got to keep coming back. A sense of optimism that you can make this deal. And again, as I said before, listening skills so you totally understand where the other side's coming from.
Yeah, I love that. Great answer, and really appreciate you coming on and talking with us. It's been a great conversation, some great themes. Love the stuff about building the infrastructure for referrals and resilience and core values and all of those things. I think they are tremendous things for us to implement in our business, and appreciate you coming on. As always, if you like money and you like real estate, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you on the next one.